So this video was posted a very short time ago, and it's by one of our favorite lol cows, Amala Kanopi. Every time, pretty much, I say I'm not racist, I just can't pronounce her name, and I prefer to call her Amaluser Kenobi, I guess. Anyway, she posted this video called, "He Threw a Tantrum Live on Air." And the description says, "This 2-minute CNN clip on trans children tells you everything you need to know about why the Democrats lost this last election." Okay, so something to do with CNN is why the Democrats lost the election, I guess. Let's tune in. All right, I'm a loser.
Right, guys, today we're reacting to a wild clip out of CNN. Apparently, these two guests go at each other pretty hard on the trans issue. Now, you guys have been tagging me, Amala, you gotta react to this. I'm just kidding. Not a single one of you asked for this. But this is what we're going to react to today. Apparently, this 2-minute...
True. Literally nobody asked for this. That's a good point, Amala.
...completely shows us the story of how Democrats lost this last election. So let's see if it's true.
I think there are a lot.
Also, can we just, enjoy the fact that she's making this weak-ass connection to the election? Like, she's desperately trying to be like, you could see that CNN is kind of cringy here. That's obviously why they lost the election. Like, no. Stop trying to make this work, okay?
A lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt.
Did he just say referring to a trans girl as a boy is a slur? It's a slur to refer to somebody as their biological sex? That's crazy.
I mean, definitionally, no. Like, it wouldn't be, technically speaking, a slur, but it would be incredibly rude and disrespectful and demeaning for pretty much no good reason. Like, if somebody says, hey, I might be biologically male, I identify as a woman, what's wrong with just referring to her as she, her? Regardless, though, the way that the guy on CNN just instantly jumped down the guy's throat when he said that boys want to play on girls' sports and whatnot, we haven't even finished watching the whole clip. We haven't even heard what the guy was going to say.
And you know what? It does seem like he's pretty respectfully trying to have a conversation about why this last election might have been lost and about the conversations that people want to have and how those people are coming to the table and realistically saying, should boys be competing with girls? And when he comes with that mild-mannered argument, this guy attacks him. And I mean, full force is attacking him, saying, I'm not going to listen to this. We won't even table the conversation. That, guys, is why you've lost. You won't even table the conversations that reasonable people are wanting to have.
I will at least try to find some common ground here. And yes, she's partially correct in the sense that there is a proper way for Democrats to convey their messaging and an improper way to do so. Claiming that everybody's transphobic or failing to define your terminology or failing to explain why gender and sex are different or any of this, that's not the right answer. And it leaves a lot of people confused and a lot of people thinking like, oh, so a bunch of burly guys are just like dominating girls' sports when this is not the case. So of course there's a proper way to go about the messaging. But again, her attempt at making it sound as if this is why Democrats lost the election or something, that is quite an embarrassing leap.
Every background of every perspective to sit with them and have the conversation. Tisk, tisk, tisk.
That's not how it is.
Jay,
they're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls softball. I'm not going to...
They're not boys because they said they're not boys. There's no such thing as a trans child. I'm just going to tell you the hard truth right there. There are kids that experience gender dysphoria, and I feel so bad for those children.
There's no such thing as a trans kid, but there is such a thing as a kid that experiences gender dysphoria? That's a trans kid! There is no such thing as a depressed child. Now, it is true that some children experience depression. However, what are you saying, lady?
That they are now living in a world where they feel like there's an incongruence with themselves and their mind and their bodies. That's so difficult to go through.
Wait, does she think that just happened? Does she think this just started to happen? First of all, this is really pathetic and embarrassing virtue signaling to be like, yeah, trans kids aren't real and they're invalid and fuck you, but you know what? I feel so sorry for them. Oh, boo-hoo, let me shed a tear and play the world's smallest violin. No, you're not convincing anybody, okay? You sound like a fucking virtue signaling loser right here. Second of all, why is she trying to say, I'm so sorry for these kids that society makes them feel this or think that? There have been people that have experienced gender dysphoria throughout all of history, throughout all of human civilization. You can read about trans people, non-binary people, etc. This has been going on. To act as though you feel so sorry for these kids that this, I don't know, current society is causing them to feel this way, that's fucking absurd and ridiculous. Because trans people, kids experiencing gender dysphoria, this has been going on forever.
We all go through tough times in our development, but to add gender dysphoria on top of that is something I would not wish on my worst enemy. But we're celebrating it instead and saying put them on puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy and give them a double mastectomy. Allow them to.
What? We're not celebrating it. First of all, I would need to know the ages of the people you're actually talking about in this hypothetical. Most of the time, if you're talking about kids just beginning puberty and then experiencing gender dysphoria, they would start puberty blockers, which are safe and reversible. That's not being celebrated. That's called treating an ailment. That's called, if you have this psychological problem, aka gender dysphoria, there is a way to go about treating it. This isn't celebrating it. What do you think that people are like having I'm trans parties or something? I don't even know what she's talking about here. She's like, this shouldn't be celebrated when these kids given puberty blockers, but no. Giving them puberty blockers is not celebrating it. It's the opposite. It's recognizing that this is in fact a problem that's significantly impacting their lives and they need medical intervention to treat it. It's the opposite of celebration.
When it couldn't be further from who you actually are. It's not an authentic journey. And he's getting so worked up about this because he feels some sort of moral superiority over everybody else. But at the end of the day, this is children that we're talking about. Their livelihoods that we're talking about. You need to calm down so we can have a conversation and keep them safe throughout this discussion that we have. Let's continue.
Yeah, what about kids experiencing gender dysphoria that you just said you feel so sorry for? Kids, by the way, that have a higher than average suicide rate compared to their peers. Kids that have an even higher suicide rate when they're denied treatment or puberty blockers or anything else. If you say you feel sorry for them, but then you say we should keep kids safe or something in the conversation, we're talking about keeping kids safe. You just don't give a fuck about trans kids.
Let me rephrase this since I'm being targeted here.
Yeah, that's good. I thought he was about to like soy boy out and say, let me rephrase it. But he said, since I'm being targeted, call them out, call them out.
No, it's okay. Clear, you are not being targeted.
I am, but it's okay.
I'm specifically saying that I know that you are not intending to be transphobic.
He should know that I'm not. He wants to.
Well, first of all, what does it even mean to be transphobic? If you recognize biological sex now, you are transphobic.
Acknowledging biological sex is not transphobic at all. Acting as if biological sex is all that exists while simultaneously ignoring the very tangible reality of gender is transphobic. There's a totally different thing here. Trans people who suffer from gender dysphoria, what is that? Those are individuals who recognize that their biology is not in line with their internal self-perception. They recognize that there is a biological difference, and it is the recognition of that biological difference that causes the gender dysphoria. So for you to act like, oh, nowadays it's transphobic to even say there's biological sex or something, what are you fucking talking about? Trans people's recognition of biological sex plays a huge role in gender dysphoria.
If you say that boys have an advantage over girls and shouldn't compete with them, you're transphobic. If you say they shouldn't be in your...
If you say that boys have an advantage over girls, it would depend in what context. In general, I don't even know. At what age? Are we talking about like middle schoolers playing sports? Because there's virtually no difference between boys and girls strength-wise until after puberty. So are we talking about like before or after puberty? Are we talking about professional sports? What are we talking about here?
If you say they shouldn't be in your locker rooms or in your bathrooms or in your spas, that's transphobic. So
actually, yeah, that is transphobic. Here's why. Trans people, so if let's say there's a trans woman, okay? Somebody who's biologically male, but they identify as a woman. If you force that person to go into the men's bathroom, that person is at a much higher risk of being sexually assaulted and abused. We've already seen studies of schools that found that gender nonconforming students that were forced to use the bathroom that simply matched their biology and not their expressed gender identity reported more sexual assaults and sexual harassment. So there is already a problem there. When trans people use the bathroom that matches their gender identity, so the trans woman using a bathroom with cis women, those women are not in any more danger by that trans woman. They have already done studies of states where gender-neutral bathrooms and locker rooms have been implemented, and there was no increase in sexual assaults or sexual harassments in those locations. There's a risk for the trans person to be forced to use the wrong bathroom. There is not a risk for the cis women to just use the bathroom with the trans woman. So it is transphobic, because now you're talking about being irrationally afraid of a trans person, so much so that you think that they pose a danger to women, and it's completely unfounded. It's completely illogical. There's absolutely no basis for this feeling or this fear or these thoughts. So therefore, what else is it besides a stupid phobia?
Clown World, this is actually why they lost the election. Because when people are trying to have normal conversations about issues that are important to them and that are impacting the most vulnerable in our society, children, they can't even have the discussion. And mind you, this is two grown men at a table full of other adults. And one of these men is a child. And the child is being listened to, much like with the trans issue. The child, who is clearly not in their right mind in what they're thinking right now, is the one that we are platforming and saying we must blindly affirm. And that's exactly what's happening.
Nobody's saying to blindly affirm anybody. Before kids can even be put on puberty blockers, they need to be confirmed gender dysphoric for a minimum of 6 months as per the international standards for trans healthcare and whatnot. Now, if that's not always happening, then that's a problem with the individual doctors and the providers not abiding by the proper protocols. This isn't a problem with trans people.
I'm not calling you transphobic.
I
I'm
want
saying
you
you're
to-
using
I
a
want-
phrase
I wanna
that
give
you
you an
know.
opportunity.
So the way
No,
regular
that's
people
not-
interpret it,
That's not
which is why
regular
those ads
people.
were
That's not regular people. There's no consensus that these are actually boys.
Oh, there is. There is, though. I mean, maybe not in America where all these...
Okay, so I don't know all the context here, but it does sound as if now this guy was saying something about trans girls being boys. So, I mean, maybe the other guy was right for at least calling him out and getting defensive there. I still think that his handling of this probably was a little too hostile, and he should have at least let the guy finish his sentence before he just instantly jumped down his throat.
people are bought and paid for doing these studies where we actually found out that doctors were finding out through their research and through treating patients that what they were doing was harmful to children, and they actually hid that data from the American public. So I wonder who he's going to cite here.
So here's what I'm actually finding out. There is one study that apparently didn't find like favorable results or something, and the quote-unquote activist doctor, as this headline says, is waiting to release the study because of the possibility of weaponization because of how heated everything is politically right now. So basically it was just one little study that maybe didn't find super conclusive positive results. This is not exactly a giant conspiracy like I'm a loser here tried to make it sound. She tried to make it sound like doctors everywhere are hiding the truth about puberty blockers, when in reality it's like one study may have not been super favorable for puberty blockers, but the doctor doesn't want to release it yet. Whoa.
And you can look to Europe and see all of these other countries who have decided definitively we do not need to be moving forward with this sort of treatment of children. In fact, it is tantamount to abuse.
No, first of all, it was Sweden that postponed or paused the puberty blockers thing, and that was literally based on junk science produced by the US. That was based on the fucking rapid onset gender dysphoria crap. That study, quote unquote study, that was so abysmal, so bad, that the original publishing journal had to pull the study and issue an apology because it was nowhere near up to academic standards. That pathetic joke of a quote unquote study was used partially as justification for Sweden to pause puberty blocking treatment. So no, this is not proof actually that our institutions are out of whack or anything of the sort. This is actually just proof that some stupid fucking studies that are poorly conducted can still carry with them quite a lot of weight, which actually, if anything, just plays in again as to why this person might be wanting to wait to release their new study, with only 95 trans kids partaking in it. Because the same way that you are weaponizing Sweden's decision to pause puberty blockers based on false information and poorly conducted studies or studies that were completely misunderstood, maybe this activist doesn't want the same thing to happen with her own study.
This whole thing about trans girls is a canard. We're talking about a tiny, tiny sliver of the population.
That may be the
and we're
case,
using
but
that
my point in
to
terms
take
of
away
its
health care from
effectiveness.
thousands of people.
Hold on, just get to your point.
My point in terms of its effectiveness, regular people with children look at these things and they say, you know what, this is a bit too far.
Yep.
I do not agree with
That
this.
they do.
I don't like this. I think Democrats are going way too much to the left on social issues. They're uncomfortable with it. A lot of people believe that. A lot of families believe that. You may disagree with that reality, but that's why Republicans kept running those ads over and over.
Okay, so I mean, I agree with him. Like, yes, it's true that there are a lot of people that are ignorant in America that think that the Democrats are going too far and now there's boys in girls sports and all this dumb shit. A lot of Americans hear like 3 stories about trans sports or something, and now all of a sudden they think that it's like a massive epidemic. But they'll also think that COVID is fake. So what if a bunch of Americans believe that or thought that? If anything, if anything, the Democrats need to acknowledge that a lot of Americans aren't that well educated on this issue, and that's why they were able to have the wool pulled over their eyes when it came to this really non-issue. Therefore, it's up to the Democrats to articulate their position and their platform better and more clearly. That's the proper response there. If these pathetic, twisted ads, men beating women in sports, blah, blah. If this is selling to a large portion of Americans, you need a way to communicate your approach and your position that also resonates with those people. And I'm sorry, but just saying you're transphobic, it's not the answer. That's not. That's the lazy way out.
Over and over again because they saw the metrics suggested
And
that they were
lying
working.
in those ads.
Not lying. I mean, look to Sweden, look to Finland, look to Germany, look to the UK right now that is going through mountains of lawsuits in regard to this. In the US, look to the cast.
There was like 1 or 2 lawsuits in the UK, and at one point puberty blockers were paused and then resumed after another lawsuit forced puberty blocker treatments to once again be offered.
So if Americans from all different demographics are coming to you and saying you've gone too far, you need to slow this down and you need to reassess, this is not an okay thing to do to children, why is it that you believe that you have the moral high ground over these people, that you are somehow the righteous one amongst the general population in the popular vote telling you you need to stop, this is not okay?
Because we don't care about what the general population says or thinks. I don't care what the population says. Maybe because I'm not a sheep. That's why. If everybody just says, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, I'm gonna not just listen and just take them or just take what they're saying as gospel. On the flip side, however, Democrats, since they're running for political office, they have a responsibility to appeal to their voter base and to hopefully appeal to future voters as well. So they do have a responsibility to make their messaging better, make their messaging clearer, sure. But just if a bunch of people in America say, this has gone too far left, doesn't mean that it's actually gone too far left and it's not okay. Maybe it just means that a large portion of Americans are fucking stupid.
It's narcissism. It's narcissism. And it's narcissism in this sort of hidden way of I'm doing things for other people. It's really not about me. But at the end of the day, it is very much about you.
Over and over again.
Really, Amala, kind of like what you're doing right now, pretending to have all this care for the kids when in reality you're just doing what you want to do for yourself.
Over and over again, and using rhetoric like you just used, saying this is boys playing girls sports. First of all, we're talking about 5 people in the entire country. We're talking.
You'll see that leftists try to say this is only a small portion of the population anyways. Okay, well, why are you trying to make it seem like the issue's smaller than it is if it's not even an issue at all? Why does it matter how much of the population is impacted by this if it's purely not an issue at all?
It is an issue when you have a gender identity and society is turning you away and refusing to acknowledge that gender identity. There is something to be said again that if it's a professional sporting setting, and depending on what the sport is, depending on when the person transitioned, if somebody transitioned after going through male puberty, they might still be too strong for certain sports or whatnot. So the conversation is not one to just be ignored and ruled out and shut down immediately, but it's one that needs to be handled with far more nuance, not just no boys in girls sports. How about trans girls who've gone through a male puberty? They might have a little bit disproportional strength to be competing against cis women. Sometimes that could be the case. It's not always the case. It's most likely not the case when it comes to like high school or middle school sports. But maybe in like professional stuff, the Olympics or something, okay, maybe there's a bit of a conversation to have there, sure. There's a nuanced way to approach this, and she is just fear-mongering, and even the people on CNN are just, no, be accepting, ah! It's like, calm down, and let's articulate our positions here.
You see? And they're trying to sort of localize it, make it smaller, say it's tinier than it actually is, because they know that it's wrong. There is sickness. We should be getting objective facts through our news.
What an objective fact is that Republicans are targeting trans people across the board, and they're passing legislation to target trans people, not only when it comes to this sports issue, but when it comes to their health care as well. So this is a problem. This might be a small thing right here where it's just trans people in sports, who cares, whatever. But when Republicans try to pass legislation to restrict that, they will make a mountain out of a molehill. They will take it and run with it, and they will pass far more legislation, and they'll restrict trans people's daily lives further.
Not all of these different opinions. And if we are getting opinions, which I do think is valuable to a certain extent with news, but news has gone too far. I would click into MSNBC to hear the news. Get some
news has gone too far?
Facts about what's going on. I don't want to hear Rachel Maddow's description of what's going on or how she feels about what's going on. And that is what our news has become.
You're giving us nothing but feelings right now. You're saying, I don't feel like it's transphobic if I feel scared that there's a trans person there that makes me feel spooked and icked out. Like, your entire fucking argument is just feelings, feelings, feelings. You forgot the facts.
If you're going to platform different ideas and different opinions and try to debate these things, it should be respectful. I mean, just at the very foundation of it. And if you can't manage to be respectful, which sure Michael was, the other guy wasn't, then you shouldn't be invited to the table anymore, because that's not what American news is about. But their numbers go up when they have these arguments. But I will say, I guess I'm contributing to that. And it's because these arguments...
Don't you have a fucking editor? Cut that out, dude. This is just why American media is so terrible. And I guess I'm kind of contributing to that, actually. What am I doing with my life?
And it's because these arguments, for me, point out the real issue and why Democrats lost. Normal people are saying you're doing too much, and you're calling those normal people transphobes, misogynists, racists, bigots, you know.
To be fair, I will say that a lot of these normal people are actually ignorant, which is clouding their judgment, which kind of plays a role in causing them to arrive at misogynistic, bigoted, transphobic, racist conclusions.
You name the word, that's what we're being called, and we're staying here calm, waiting for you to stop throwing your tantrum so that we can...
If earlier you said, Democrats, if all of these people are saying that you're going too far, maybe you should listen. Okay, I'm a loser. If all these people are saying that you're a racist, sexist, misogynistic piece of shit who's also transphobic, maybe you should listen. That's right. Maybe you should apply your own dumb fuck logic and listen. Now, of course, I would not really apply that logic seriously to anything, because that's ridiculous. A large group of people saying something does not make that thing any more true. However, if she wants to apply that stupid fuck logic, then she should definitely be living by it as well.
If you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a member today. Members get early access to videos, access to all the stream VODs, and exclusive access to emotes as well. So if you'd like to support the channel, become a member today.